Hey, welcome to 8:30 Prep on Monday nights. I'm Phil McCaffrey, and this is
David Cerniglia.
And we are 3R Prep. We are the two dudes who started this company 5 years ago this month. Yeah, we've been in this building for 5 years. So we've taken over a small part of the building and made it a studio, and now we're doing live streaming and webinars and checking things out. So tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock, my high school, Bishop Canavan, is offering the ACT. So last night I did a webinar on ACT math, and I invited the king of grammar, David Cerniglia. The reason we're partners is I'm a math teacher and he's an English professor. So I figured, hey, math and English, we could teach together.
Yeah.
So today we're going to go over what's on the ACT on Section 1. I think it's the easiest section to beat. And my favorite book on the ACT grammar is Erica Meltzer's ACT English. If you're going to take the test again, make sure you buy this book. It is worth every penny. Erica Meltzer. So if you want a link to it on Amazon, just give me a shout out. Phil at 3R Prep. I'll put my email in the notes. That's definitely worth the money. So, David, what's on the ACT English Section 1? You open up your booklet. It's Section 1. What happens?
Grammar. So it's important to note what the section itself is called, which is English, which is vague, a little ambiguous. The reason that they don't call it the grammar section is because it involves more than just grammar. That's certainly part of it. It also involves doing some specific reading, similar to what you have to do in the reading section, just using context and word identification to be able to get questions right. But a large portion of what's tested on the section are conventions of English grammar. Basic rules of punctuation, subject-verb agreement, pronoun agreement, all things that you probably haven't thought about or done explicitly in school since 6th or 7th grade.
6th or 7th grade. It's like a middle school test. Talk about your daughter. What happened last year with your daughter?
So for the past 2 years, because I'm a terrible parent, I've given my middle school age daughter an English section from the ACT. The first time she was in 6th grade, it was about this time of the year. It was January or February, right before she turned 12. So the first time she was 11, she got a 34 on the test, 33. When she took it last year, she got a 34. And I haven't given her another one this year, but I suspect I'm predicting this. We have this recorded, right? 22. So I'm not kidding, 22. Because the reason she found it so easy the last 2 years was that as she was doing them, she said, oh, semicolons, we just had a worksheet on semicolons, or commas, we just had a worksheet on commas.
That's Damien, our producer, sneaking in to move the microphone away from us.
Too loud.
Hi, Damien. Say hello to everybody. Okay. Hopefully somebody from Olsh is watching, so and maybe some Seton LaSalle. But this is mostly for Bishop Canavan, so this is the only people I sent the link out to.
Awesome.
So what are the parts of speech?
So in order to understand the grammar, the way it's tested on the ACT or the SAT, this would be the writing and language portion of the SAT for those of you who are going to take it. You have to have some basic definitions under our belt so that it makes it a little bit more clear when we explain things a little bit later down the road. So what I have here are 6 parts of speech. There are actually 7 parts of speech. I didn't include conjunctions or interjections because you don't really need to know those. There isn't any concept that really requires understanding that. So let's look at the important ones. Some of these you'll remember, some of them you won't. A noun is a person, place, or thing. Where? Pen?
Pen.
Pens.
Color.
Watch me. Red. Check it out.
There you go. Yeah, there you go.
Thanks, guys.
Nice.
Okay. Noun, person, place, or thing. Some people have started to add idea, person, place, thing, or idea, so that you can get what are called abstract nouns, like love or justice. Those are things.
Love is a many splendid thing would make love a noun.
Correct.
Excellent.
Right? Love is a thing, if we shorten that sentence up. Pronouns. Pronouns are the little words that stand in for nouns. I, he, she, it, these, them, those, words like that.
And whom. We're going to go over who and whom.
Verbs. I think out of all of these, verbs and nouns, or things that act like nouns, are probably the 2 most important elements to get a handle on. A verb is an action, and I think most people know that. Action. or it's a state of being. The most common verb in English doesn't actually feel like an action at all. It is to be. Conjugations of to be would be words like is, are, were. So they don't feel like actions, but if you find a word like this in a sentence, those are our verbs.
Hey, what about ing verbs? What's going on there?
So let's take a look at something like driving, which people will look at and say, clearly it's got drive in it, it looks like an action. But then the question is, can you use driving as a verb?
Yeah, I driving down the street.
Had been driving.
I had
driving.
been. And that would have been...
I driving today or I driving tomorrow or I driving yesterday don't work.
But the wrong answer in a verb is going to be a gerund or a participle, right? They love to throw that in as a wrong answer. ING is almost always wrong.
Absolutely. Particularly for those of you that are taking the SAT. On the SAT, they hate ING words. Okay, so let's...
The SAT, if you take it, has mimicked the ACT. So you only need the Erica Meltzer ACT book, wouldn't you say?
She has an SAT book. I don't think the SAT book is as good. The ACT book will get you pretty much everything that's on the SAT. And it's a better book. Adjectives, I think most people remember these. Adjectives describe nouns. They would be words like tall or furry or brown. I guess I was thinking of a bear. Tall and furry and brown.
Big, tall, brown, furry bear.
Adverbs. If you look at the word, it looks like a combination of adjective and verb. So adverbs describe verbs or other adverbs or adjectives as well. Luckily, this sort of catch-all or this adverb that takes in a lot of these different functions, it's not something that's particularly important to know on the test. The one thing that you do need to know is the thing that you learned in middle school, which is that many, many adverbs in English end in ly. So if you hear something like I ran quickly, that's describing how a person ran, that's actually an adverb.
So the great Apple ad from many years ago when Steve Jobs took back over was
think different. Right, it should be think differently.
So why did he do that?
I don't know. Because he was trying to be differently.
You can't be differently.
Well, if you can think different, why can't you be differently?
Oh, man.
We should take this show on the road. Okay.
We should teach this. We should teach this for a living.
Prepositions. One reason we'll get to in a little bit, one reason it's important to know prepositions, there's an easy little visual we have that we can remember this. Some of you may have had to remember lists of prepositions or had a preposition song that you had to sing when you were in middle school.
We still don't have that preposition song. Does anybody have that? If anybody has a preposition song, send it to me at phil@3rprep.
But if we take a look at what I call the preposition plane and describe the preposition plane in relation to the cloud, we can identify prepositions. The plane can fly over the cloud or through the cloud or below the cloud. Or
I was an aviator in the Navy. We can talk with our hands like this.
An aviator in the Navy? Or between the clouds or among the clouds, those are all prepositions. So if you look at the word is preposition. So prepositions are like the mortar between the bricks behind us. They help to glue things together. Important to remember when we get to commas because commas split things up. So what you're going to see is we don't put commas before or after prepositions.
Well, how do they test prepositions? What are some of the common questions that they do? What's the rabbit hutch one?
One of the things that they'll do is they show order or position. So if you say I am above you or you are above me, those are the same words in a slightly different order and they mean very different things. So being careful about ins or ons or tos or ats. For those of you that are fortunate enough to be native English speakers, at least within the context of this test, it benefits native English speakers much more than non-native English speakers. There are certain prepositions that will go with certain words, and there's not necessarily a good reason, but they just sound right. So if I said to you, hey, Phil, I have to get out of here. I need to study at my math test. That should sound wrong to you. It's study for my math test. Why? That's just how it is in English.
Now, are those called idioms?
Those are idioms. It's a structure in language that doesn't have a specific rule. It just is the way it is.
It just is the way it is. We agree with it. So, in the preposition, one of the things, if you practice on the ACTs, there's a couple of famous prepositions that are wrong, and it'll say, like, the famous climbing Mount Fuji, the rocks were on the roof, or the roof was on the rocks, or we sat on the rabbit hutch behind the field in the house. So it's chose in order. So break it up into order and what makes sense. So ask yourself, are the rocks on the hut or is the hut on the rocks? So ask yourself which way it fits.
Yes.
Because they have it in all bunch of different orders and it doesn't make sense.
Right. One of the things that we forget as native speakers, because we just do this, is that syntax or word order makes a difference. You can have the same words in a slightly different order, and the sentence means something really different. So the easiest way to get through this, and this is our standard advice on this, is read these sentences out loud in your head. Obviously, during the test, you can't read out loud.
You can mumble.
Unless someone stabs you in the neck with a number 2 pencil during the test. But read the sentences and actually pronounce them out loud in your head and get a sense of them. I'll show you when we get to things like punctuation. Punctuation doesn't have anything to do with pausing or slowing down necessarily. But
commas don't pause.
It's not about the pause, it's about the clause.
That's good. That's really good. We're gonna make that into a poster.
The Crossroads kids motivated me.
We're gonna send that out to counselors. That'll be our marketing.
However, when it comes to things sounding correct, not punctuation, but things like subject, verb, agreement, or prepositions, if you read them out loud in your head, you should be able to hear whether or not they sound okay. Okay, so we had parts of speech I gave you. The 2 other things we need to know are we need to be able to identify subject and object. Object, a little bit less important. Subject, necessary.
Very, very important.
Super, super, super important.
Because subject-verb agreement is always tested 100% of the time.
Subject-verb agreement, plus in order to have an independent clause, you have to have a subject and a verb. So subjects come in, and we don't put commas between subjects and verbs. So there's lots of reasons you need
Unless
to know
we put 2 of them.
Unless we have 2 of them. Oh. So what subject and object refer to is they refer to what nouns do or pronouns do, any of the people, places, and things in sentences we can categorize as being either a subject or an object. Subject is really simple, and it's not what you think it is. Subject is not what the sentence is about. Subject is the noun that's doing the action of the verb in the sentence. I want to go.
Yeah, purple. I like purple.
I want a thinner line.
A thinner line.
Let's do a light purple.
Teachers love whiteboards.
I want a thinner line. Yeah. Okay. Oh, look at that. It's a dotted line. Okay. So if we take a look at this first, the first sentence here, I threw the ball to Luke. The first thing that you're going to want to do is identify the action. What's the action in that? I threw the ball to Luke. Threw. That's the action. Awesome.
Ben Roethlisberger threw the ball to Antonio Brown.
So then to identify the subject, it's simply the noun that's doing the action. So who or what's doing the throwing? Right here we have I. That's the subject. I threw. So now we move on to independent and dependent clauses. The easiest way to think about this is an independent clause is a group of words that can stand on its own independently. And a dependent clause is just anything that can't. There's a more technical definition for what a dependent clause is. There's a difference between a clause and a word and a phrase. You don't need to make it that complicated. It's a multiple choice test. So make this easy. Just separate sentences into things that can stand on their own, like we won or she understands. If you listen to those could be complete sentences. She and her friends all drove home after a party. Independent clause, that can stand on its own. She was younger. Independent clause that can stand on its own. So the easiest way to identify independent clauses, especially if you're a native speaker, is just listen for them. You'll be able to hear things that need something else to complete them.
One of my favorite things to teach when we're doing the English section is to identify the subject and the verb of every sentence, because I hate to say that I want to learn how to diagram sentences, because in 7th grade it was torture, but now I want to learn how to do it, because every answer choice, everything hinges on the subject and the verb. So they'll put in a dependent clause between the subject and the verb, and they'll say like the kayaks, the equipment of the kayaks, the health of the patients.
Totally.
You're going to go over that one.
Yeah, and we can look at, if we look at this sentence here, she and her friends all drove home after the party. Let's figure out the verb. So we're looking for an action or a state of being. So drove, that's the action. So then what's the subject? Who did the driving? She and her friends all. So that's the subject of the sentence. Some of you may remember from middle school, they learned about things like compound subjects and complex. Don't worry about any of that stuff. Just identify the verb and then the noun or the nouns that are doing the verb.
Yeah, rarely if ever it's tested, but it does come up when it says there'll be a compound noun, and they'll throw something in there like subject verb agreement.
Well, you have to know. Look at this sentence. It's she and her friends. That's plural. Otherwise, if it were just she, it would be she drives home. So yeah, that verb depends on the fact that you know that that's a plural subject, she and her friends. But being able to get into the nitty-gritty and say that's a complex or a compound, being able to identify those things aren't that important. I think in the same way that probably knowing the distributive property in math and what it's called and how to define it is less important than just knowing when you're supposed to distribute when you see a math problem.
This is so exciting. One of the things we're going to do is turn grammar into math lessons. There's just rules.
So in order to have an independent clause, you have to have a subject, which is some kind of noun, and then a verb. Or a simpler way to think about it is you need a thing, and the thing has to do something. So we can have really short independent clauses like she was younger, I drove home, we won. But just listen for completeness. So most of the punctuation on the test, period, semicolons, comma fanboys, colons, dashes, all really depend on you being able to recognize the difference between an independent clause that can stand on its own and then dependent clauses that can't.
Punctuating independent clauses. Big on the test. This shows up, what do you say, about 4 times?
It's the right answer that's being tested 4 times. It's probably helps you eliminate answer choices for another 5 or 6.
So we're talking about 12 questions out of, 75?
Mm-hmm. It's a lot.
It's a lot. It's a lot.
And this is one of those things that you should probably know how to do anyway, just to be a literate human in the world, for when you write emails to potential employers or things like that.
Yeah, when I write emails and copy, David, and I get these nasty little things back like, nice comma placement. It's great having a grammar teacher as your business partner.
Okay, so let's take a look. We're going to get rid of this for now. This is really an SAT only thing. Okay, so if we take a look down here, I have 2 independent clauses. We can hear it. She was happy. Was is the verb. That's to be. She is the subject. And we can hear that it sounds complete if we have happy on it. She was happy. She had a good day. These are so boring. I wasn't exactly... most creative. She was happy. She had a good day.
Hey, at least you got sentences on
She was a girl. She had a house. Where's the bibliothèque? Okay. So we have 2 independent clauses here. So on the ACT...
You should have used my sentence. I drove to 3-hour prep. I tutored with Phil. You got to plug the company in there. At least you wore the T-shirt. So.
I called 3-hour prep with my parents' Visa card in my hand. So when we have 2 independent clauses, there are 3 different ways you can punctuate them. So there are 3 things that we can put in here that would make this sentence correct. We can ignore the capitalization in these words here. They do not test capitalization on the ACT. So capitalization for any and all answer choices is always assumed to be correct. So we can assume here that we would change capitalization if we needed to. So the 3 options that we can put in here, we can put a period between those 2, capitalizing the S, and we just have 2 complete sentences. We can put a semicolon between them, because on the ACT, what's a semicolon?
A semicolon and a period function exactly in the same way. The ACT only tests function, not style. Your teachers would tell you there's a style to use a semicolon, and the style is always that they function the same. So there is no stylistic change.
And then we have comma fanboys, for those of you who remember 6th or 7th grade. So it wasn't even called English then. It's language arts.
Language arts.
Language arts. So fanboys, for, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. I would know those. I would know those. I wouldn't worry too much about for or nor if those are going to bother you. I don't think there may be one ACT that uses for in this way as a coordinating conjunction. So here, what we're doing is using a comma and a fanboys in between these 2 independent clauses. I'm pointing at the screen as though they can see it. You can't see that.
Yes,
I know.
They can.
This?
They can.
Okay.
Damien can click and they can see just the screen. They can't see it.
Right, they can't see my hands. You can't see what I'm pointing to.
That's what the pen's for.
This is why I don't have my radio show anymore. It was called Look at This with David. It only lasted a couple of days.
Podcast.
Fan.
But no teenagers listen to podcasts, so that's a waste.
They also don't have money, so advertisers don't care about it.
Yeah, really.
Comma fanboys, that would be a comma with the words for, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. The big ones that you're going to see on the test are and, but, or, yet, and so. For and nor are relatively rare. I think there's one test where they use for in this way. Using for as a coordinating conjunction between two sentences sounds something like this. I'm very tired tonight. For last night, I didn't get much sleep. It sounds very literary. We don't get a lot of that on the test.
No, I don't think I've seen that. I have seen a yet, though.
They'll definitely do yet, nor I don't think either. Because if you'd said, like, I'm neither happy nor sad, that's not a comma fanboys. That's just a little coordinating conjunction by itself. Or it's not a coordinating conjunction anymore. It's something else.
Conjunction.
But nor as a coordinating conjunction would be something like, I am not happy with you, nor is she no. I am not happy with you, nor am I. I need an independent clause after that. It's hard to even do.
Yeah, it's not on the test. Don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it. Commas and dashes. So just as a period, a semicolon, and a comma fanboys all do the same thing, a colon and a dash do the same thing also, which is separate an independent clause from a dependent clause. So the way that we typically see, this is an incorrect use of a colon. I'm going to show you why. What we actually need to have when we have a colon or a dash, again, the same thing on the ACT, is we have to have an independent clause at the beginning. I like music as an independent clause. And then some dependent clause or dependent stuff at the end. So I like music, colon, jazz, classical, hip-hop is actually correct. If we get rid of this and we read this, again, we're looking for an independent clause at the beginning. I like music such as...
Wait, how did you get that eraser to work?
I just click the top part.
Oh, man, dude, he's teaching me
something
about my own book.
The middle does something else, I think. And so does that. It's this. You got to do just here. Don't mind us.
Dude, that is awesome. I learned something about my own board that I've owned for 8 years.
Okay, what else are we going to look at? Non-essential clauses. Anytime you see a word or a group of words in between commas, dashes, or parentheses, so a word or group of word or group of words in between commas, in between dashes, or in between parentheses.
What's the difference between this dash and the previous dash?
They just look the same, but they don't do the same thing at all.
So if there's one dash,
it's like a colon.
If there's two dashes,
it's like a pair of commas or pair of parentheses.
Remember that. One dash is like a colon. Two dashes is like two commas.
Yes, perfect. The way we can identify these commas as correct is relatively straightforward. It's really, really, really simple. Here's what you're going to do. I have a pair of commas in here. I have a comma before which and a comma after laundry. So I can just try to get rid of this and see if the sentence reads as a grammatically correct sentence. My shirt needs to be washed. See, to a Pittsburgher, maybe that doesn't sound correct. Maybe my shirt needs washed. There's no verb in that, guys. Needs looks like a verb, but it's not. It's a participle. That's just like an ing word. So what you're typically going to get is you'll get a comma around some noun or group of nouns or adjectives. It depends on what it is. Some of them are called appositives. Some of you may have learned that in middle school. They're not all strictly speaking appositives. This is actually, see, that's not an appositive. It's not. It's a
which word.
Yeah, it's not an appositive.
Witches are always wrong. Watch out for witches.
Witches are always evil. So these are ones that I needed to add stuff to. Anyway, what you're typically going to do is, in instances where the commas are incorrect, when you take out the stuff in between, like I did here, and this said something like, violinist Jamie Lee took the stage. And if you take out the commas in the name, you end up with violinist took the stage, which should sound wrong to you. In English, we need an article before a noun like violinist, so it would have to be the violinist, or a violinist, some violinist, something like that. So the 3 sets of punctuation that we have, we can probably flip back through these real quick. These are the 3 important sets of punctuation to know. If you don't know them by tomorrow, I would know them by the time you take the test next. Period, semicolon, comma, fanboys, when you have 2 independent clauses. Colons and dashes when you have an independent clause followed by a dependent clause. And then if you have a pair of commas, pair of dashes, pair of parentheses, it means you have to be able to take that stuff out. Something else.
So one of the things that you can do, Erica Meltzer recommends this, is whatever between the dashes, draw a line over it lightly and see if you can read the sentence and make sense without it.
It's usually easier to do it that way. Yeah, take your pencil and... I still remember what the Princeton Review used to call it. The Princeton Review used to call that strategy trimming the fat. It was from the SAT 2 subject book in writing from a billion years ago. They call it trim the fat, which I thought was so crazy.
Oh, commas, man. Gotta know what commas.
Okay, so...
my wife says she loves a nor.
Okay, so let's take a look at...
nor is in.
A sentence and talk about where commas don't go. The easiest place to get commas right on this test, I don't care what Erica Meltzer says. Sorry, Erica.
Erica's not watching us.
She's not one of
She's the number 1 on Amazon. She's not watching our little YouTube channel. Hey, Eric, you want to be a guest on our YouTube show?
The easiest way to get comma questions right is to know the 3 places that they always try to get you to put commas that they don't go. So we're going to diagram the sentence. You ready?
All right.
Okay, what's the verb, Phil?
The verb is through.
Through, that's the verb. Okay, and then what's the subject?
The subject is the ball.
No, the subject is I, because I is doing the throwing.
Wait,
doofus.
There's an object there then.
Okay, so let's...
We should have put one like the kayaks, the equipment of the kayaks. We should have done that one.
We're having a hard enough time with this one. Why complicate things? We have big and red, which are both adjectives.
I knew the subject was I.
I know he's giving me a hard time. Now, here's our word to. Remember the preposition plane. The plane flies to the cloud. That's a preposition. This is why you need to know this. And then James is just a regular old noun. It's an object. You don't need to worry about objects here. All right, here are the places commas don't go. We do not put commas between the subject and the verb. That's the thing and the action the thing is doing. Those guys go together. We also don't put commas before or after prepositions because prepositions put things together, like Phil said, above, below, next to, between. And then the final place they try to get you to put commas that they don't go are in between describing words and the things that they describe. So in between adjectives and nouns or in between adverbs and verbs. They do not go there. So the big 3 comma rules are no comma between subject and verb.
No subjects and verb.
No comma before or after prepositions.
Before or after prepositions.
No comma between describing words and the things they describe.
Describing words and the things they describe. Those are always on the test. Just like period and semicolon. Just like dashes and colons. Just like commas. Commas are definitely on this test. You're going to see it.
Okay, what do we have? Any questions?
Yeah, Athena says the Pittsburgh lack of to be. Arg.
Yeah,
she's a pirate.
It's not
You're a Pittsburgh pirate, Athena.
Clearly not a Pittsburgher if she's mentioning the Pirates. Ooh! No.
Hey, the Pirates are in the first World Series. Come on.
Okay, so that's really the big stuff in terms of punctuation. We can talk a little bit about who and whom. This is sort of fun because everybody screws it up, but really it's not that important when it comes to the test. There are typically 1, maybe 2 questions that test who and whom.
But it's still fun, and it's a good thing to learn, and there's a great memory device for it. So who versus whom. One is a
subject and one is an object. So we said before that the subject is the noun that's doing the verb. So here I have I threw the ball to Steve. So I is the subject, threw is the verb, and then the objects are getting the action of the verb over here. So in English, we use different pronouns in the subject position.
I'm so impressed that he knows how to use that pen.
And the object position. It still looks like I'm a... drunk 2-year-old writing this.
What we've done in American English is we've gotten rid of whom, haven't we? It's going to go away ultimately. It's going to evolve into just who, right?
I think it's the death throes of whom. There are some times when whom still sounds correct. On the test, they'll say something like, there were a lot of people at the party, many of whom were having a good time. For most people, when they say, to try to say something like many of who were having a good time, that sounds wrong. But there are places where who sounds right that it isn't. Like, hey, Phil, who were you just talking to? Sounds great. Who were you just talking to? It should be whom were you just talking to?
Because the
or
to
it really should
object.
be to whom were you just talking?
To whom?
That's a good way to lose friends. Don't talk like that. So there's
I'm really good at losing friends, so I should try that.
I'm still here. So we have subject pronouns like I, she, he, and they. Those match up with who. So if we look at these words, these all have to do an action. I threw the ball. She had a good day. He went to the party. They went home. When those people become objects, that is, they get the action of a verb, as in I threw the ball to her, or I gave the ball to him, or I threw them into the pool. Those are object pronouns. So who goes up here with our subject pronouns, and whom is down here. So here's the trick. In order to remember who or whom, you just have to remember the 3 M's. Him, them, and whom.
I love that one. Him, them, whom. The M's have it. So I threw the ball to him. I threw the ball to who?
To whom did you throw the ball? To him. Yeah, him.
So him threw the ball.
He threw the ball.
He threw the ball. So who threw the ball? He threw the ball.
To him.
Put he and him, they and them.
That sounded really confusing. Him, them, whom. So let's take a look.
Right, put it in the notes.
That's why we have an example here. I saw my old friends, many of, and we're going to look at who or whom. So what I would do here is...
Oh, we only have one cursor. You can't write while I'm writing. What'd you do?
I want to see something. Oh, what's that?
You made it too big?
I don't know. I just... Yeah. Anyway. That we're over-engineering a solution to a very simple problem, which is... so let's say many of them I hadn't seen in a long time. Sure, that sounds, at least to me anyway, that sounds way better than many of they. Which would be our other option. Many of they I hadn't seen in a long time. No, I think it's got to be many of them. Whom, them. Him, them, whom.
Him, them, whom.
Just remember the whooms.
Wait, don't write anything. Let me use the cursor. Him, them.
I said remember the whom's.
Whom. All right. Him, them, whom. I love that one.
With whom are you going to prom? With him. Not who are you going to prom with. That's another thing. We say that all the time. Who are you going to prom with? You wouldn't say I'm going to prom with he.
I ain't going to a prom with he.
I go to prom with he? No, certainly not. Or hopefully not anyway. At least not on purpose.
Well, you wouldn't. I'm going with him.
You
got a prom date this year?
No.
We have to go to a prom.
Grown-up prom, that would be fun.
We're going to have to throw our prep prom.
Terrible. Okay, so the big things, because these guys are taking the test tomorrow, right?
You're taking the test tomorrow morning. There's a basketball game tonight.
Should be asleep. What time is it? 9 o'clock?
Yeah.
You guys should be asleep by now.
Yep.
Last minute test advice for everyone?
Well, the thing I also like to say is there are also questions that we call rhetoric questions. There are 2 styles of questions. They just underline parts of speech or grammar and punctuation, and then there's an actual question. If there's an actual question, there's a key word in it. And my favorite is Luigi. You know, the wheelchair.
Positive, friendly.
Positive and friendly. So positive and friendly. People get this one wrong all the time, but the right answer was purr, because a kitten, when they're happy, purrs. So it's positive and friendly. So underline the keywords. So Phil has four rules, 3 of them to do with math. But underline the keywords. I like to say that the ACT is about reading. The English grammar and rhetoric section is about reading. The math is almost all word problems. There's going to be at least 50-some word problems. The reading passages are about reading passages. And the science is about technical reading, about charts and graph. So you got 4 sections of the test, and they're all about reading. So read with your pencil. Your brain goes a lot faster than your eyes. Your eyes are looking at symbols and turning them into thoughts and words in your brain. Your brain is moving way, way faster than your eyes. So slow down your reading. Some of us.
Some of our brains aren't moving as quickly as our eyes.
Your eyes. Your brain definitely moves faster than your eyes. I think you could read.
Look, man, I think the motto in this test is slow is smooth and smooth is fast. You have to be able to get through the questions, right, efficiently. But writing things down and using your pencil is gonna speed you up, right? It'll help you to not have to go back and reread.
It may seem like it'll slow you down, but it will actually speed you up because you'll understand it. So read it very carefully. Each word matters, and then go for the keywords. In the English section was most what we were talking about tonight. If there is an actual question, the question has a keyword. One of the things that I love is, should the author put this sentence, or where should it go? The one thing that I love about that question is it almost always has a pronoun or a location.
Yeah, I mean they're right here. These are really good candidates. Any of these words in here, like I, she, he, they. There's one on one of, I think my favorite one is, this is Rosie, she said.
Yes.
Which begs the question, who's Rosie? It has to be in the sentence immediately before it, because pronouns have to take the place of very specific nouns. So it's, this is Rosie, she said, who's the person who said it? That also has to be clear. Those are called antecedents. It's just the word that the pronoun's replacing. And it turned out Rosie was a tortoise.
Rosie's the tortoise, who was 56 years old. Anytime there's a pronoun, always look for the noun that it's taking the place of. The ACT is very specific in that a pronoun has an antecedent. They never ever start off with a pronoun. No. They always have it replacing a proper noun.
And it's always a noun in the same sentence or in the sentence immediately before it. You don't have to go looking for it. So make sure that you focus your reading around the parts of the passage where the question is. Don't overread.
Don't overread. So subject-verb hangs everything. There'll be subject-verb agreement. Remember that regular verbs and nouns have agreement. So just read the subject and the verb. Do they agree? So the equipment of the kayaks is.
Yes.
So that is
would be helpful
question.
If we had this stuff up here.
We could have put some ACT questions on it, but we will definitely do that in the future.
Making sure that you underline, I saw my old friends. There's the verb saw. What's the subject? That's I.
Subject and verb.
So just make sure that the subject and the verb, it's not I seen my old friends. That would be wrong.
I seen my old friends.
That would be incorrect.
There are many incorrect things. So thanks for watching. I hope
good luck tomorrow, guys.
Yeah, the Canavan guys the Canavan students who are watching can have a good test day and say goodbye to Miss Liptak, who is leaving Canavan for South Park at the end of the week. So Friday's her last day. Very sad day for us. She's been a great friend. So this is 8:30 Prep. I'm Phil McCaffrey. That's David Cerniglia. We're the owners of 3R Prep. If you want to come in and tutor with us, 3rprep.com. Thanks so much for watching.
Thanks, guys.